Welcome to this online course content that supports preparing to take the Maryland Tree Expert exam. The supplemental presentation to the study guide is intended to aid those individuals who are preparing to take the Maryland Tree Expert exam as required by the Maryland Tree Expert licensing law. Anyone seeking to practice or advertise tree care services in the state of Maryland must obtain this license from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. This presentation corresponds to the information in the online study guide. The text of the study guide, version 5.1, may be found at dnr.maryland.gov/forest. Click on the Urban and Community Forestry tab at the top of the page, and then Tree Expert Law in the menu on the left-hand side of the website. Maryland Tree Expert Exam, Study Guide version 5.1, Chapter 9, Construction Management. Loss of forest cover in Maryland occurs primarily as a result of increased development and urbanization. Construction damage is one of the greatest causes of tree death and decline in urban areas. Development impacts can damage trees directly by severing roots, severing branches, and compacting the soil. The most serious damage caused by construction occurs underground from construction activities that cause soil compaction and root damage. Most of a tree's absorbing roots are in the upper few inches of soil. Their ability to absorb oxygen, water, and minerals is reduced when this soil is compacted and the pore space between soil particles is greatly reduced. An effective initial step is to perform a tree resource evaluation, which is completed during the project's planning phase. The trees within the project area and adjacent areas encroaching on the project area should be included based on defined criteria, such as species, size, condition, spacing, and structure. This evaluation can be a survey or an inventory. A survey is a description of all trees based on a representative sample compared to an inventory, which is a comprehensive listing of individual trees. This evaluation is a document describing the tree resources present with information that includes species, location, condition, plant community, structure, health, and population estimate. A tree expert or other qualified professional shall complete the tree resource evaluation. Trees included in the tree resource evaluation should be assigned suitability for conservation ratings. Good indicates good health, structural stability, and potential for longevity at the site. Moderate indicates fair health, some structural defects, and the need for a little more intensive management. Poor means poor health with significant structural defects and is expected to decline and probably not suitable for retention. Factors to consider when evaluating a tree's suitability for conservation include tree health, structural integrity, species response to the construction impacts, age, longevity, and the extent and degree of impact. A tree management report shall be developed during the design phase of the project and should include an evaluation of the impacts on trees from the proposed site development and construction activity. The report should include tree locations, descriptions of the applicable tree populations, suitability for conservation, limits of construction, and evaluation of impact to the trees, proximity of the trees to existing and proposed features, recommendations for retention or removal, and recommendations for design changes if needed to preserve the trees, tree conservation specifications, and post-construction recommendations. A tree conservation plan should also be developed during the design phase of the project and integrated with the site development plan. This plan should include the locations of the trees to be preserved, tree protection zones and barriers, soil erosion controls, staging and storage areas, existing and proposed utilities, and other on-site activities. The plan should also include consequences for non-compliance. Implementation of tree protection specifications should be monitored by the tree expert. Trees scheduled for retention should not be damaged during tree removal during the pre-construction phase. Tree protection zone barriers shall be installed prior to site clearing, grading, and demolition, and maintained throughout the construction process. Specifications for barriers should include, but are not limited to, the types of fencing, use of barriers, for example signs, manner of installation, and conditions of encroachment into the critical root zone. During the construction phase of a project, the tree expert should monitor tree health and compliance with tree protection zones. The tree expert should communicate the tree specifications during a pre-construction meeting to all persons involved in the development process. Levels of compliance with tree protection specifications and goals should be documented and reported. This is a site in Frederick County during and after construction. The tree or trees will show signs and symptoms if construction damage has occurred. These can include slow rates of growth in the crown. You may see some dieback, especially at the upper tips. On leaves, you can see that they may be wilted, scorched, undersized. Maybe the autumn color shows up prematurely, out of season. They prematurely drop their leaves. The trunk, you may see actual wounds where the bark is removed. You may see adventitious sprouting or suckering, or insect damage and disease that might be more severe than normal. You can see on the branches that the growth rate has slowed. There may be actual wounds. Again, you may see sprouting and suckering there as well. And fruits and flowers. You may see an abnormally large crop of fruit, and it may be flowering out of season. Here's an example of some tip dieback in the crown of this large white oak tree as a result of soil compaction from a construction project. Keep in mind that certain symptoms may not show up in the tree until into the future. If trees are damaged during construction, then what? In the event of damage to either the tree protection zone barriers, of course that should be corrected right away, or trees within them, corrective measures should be specified and implemented. For the trees themselves that are damaged, as soon as treatment can begin, after the damage, the better. If a significant portion of the root system is destroyed, then the remaining root system should be pampered, and perhaps the tree should be evaluated if it's even still able to be retained. Mulch is good to apply to hold soil moisture, moderate temperature extremes, and remove any competition from other plants around the tree. Regular irrigation is really effective because trees that don't become moisture stressed have a better chance at survival. Doing anything that maintains the tree vitality to avoid stress and infestation of insects and diseases, of course, is desirable. If fertilizer is needed, use a slow release form during the recovery period of the tree. The critical root zone is the minimum volume of roots necessary for maintenance of tree health and stability. The critical root zone is determined based on a diameter measurement at breast height on the tree. This measurement is measured at 4.5 feet above the grade and is referred to as DBH. Specimen trees are defined as those trees with a 30-inch diameter, DBH, or greater. The critical root zone for these specimen trees is a circle with a radius of 1.5 feet for every 1 inch DBH. For those trees that are not specimen trees or less than 30 inches DBH, the critical root zone is a circle with a radius of 1 foot for every 1 inch DBH. The minimum critical root zone is 8 feet. Here's an example of calculating the critical root zone of a specimen tree. The critical root zone for a specimen tree is 1.5 foot radius for every inch diameter of the tree. In this example, this 30-inch diameter tree has a critical root zone radius of 45 feet. Keep in mind that the critical root zone radius may extend beyond the drip line of the tree. If few to no roots over 1 inch in diameter will be impacted by construction activity, the tree will probably tolerate the impact. Most healthy trees are able to tolerate removal of possibly up to 1/2 of their absorbing roots, not the structural roots, without serious effect. According to ANSI A300, tree protection devices such as fencing, berms, and signage can be installed prior to site work to limit access to the critical root zone. For temporary access over a tree's root zone, you can use vertical mulching and then place 6 to 12 inches of mulch to disperse the weight of any equipment. When construction is finished, half of the depth of the mulch can be removed and spread out over the area under the drip line. Sometimes aeration systems are installed to help preserve trees, although there is little research to confirm the value of these systems. When grade is lowered during construction activity, it is referred to as a cut. Changes in grade can result in the loss of root volume, the aeration in the soil is affected, and drainage patterns are changed. If the grade is raised, it is referred to as fill, and this may suffocate the roots. As little as 4 inches of grade change can kill some species. In this particular instance, the grade was changed around this large specimen tree by more than 5 feet. Tree walls and retaining walls are scheduled for installation during the construction process to allow tree retention when changes in grade are required. The graphic on the left is for a tree well that is used when the grade is raised using fill. The graphic on the right is a retaining wall that is used when the grade is lowered with a cut. Tree walls and retaining walls are only useful if properly installed. This tree well is definitely too close to the trunk of this red oak. According to ANSI standards, if fill must be placed within the critical root zone of the tree well should be at least 24 inches away from the trunk flare. It is commonly thought that a healthy tree can tolerate removal of approximately 1/3 of its total root mass. Trenching can severely injure a tree. Instead, auger under the roots. Tunneling may also be used instead of trenching to minimize impact to a tree's critical root zone. Minimum depth should be 24 inches, so below the root plate, to avoid damage to any taproots that may be present. Pruning roots prior to construction can help avoid impacts to the critical root zone. Roots should be cleanly cut using a vibratory knife or other acceptable equipment. Backfill the trench with soil to minimize drying of the roots. Here is an example of how trenching can severely damage a tree. Here, a trench was put in place within the critical root zone of the tree in the back of the photograph, and the roots were not cleanly cut, but cut, quote unquote, with the backhoe. If there is forest on the site, some is cleared and some retained. The retained trees along the limits of disturbance should be evaluated for susceptibility to wind throw. Interior forest trees that are now exposed to the wind as edge trees may not have developed a strong root system as they grew and were protected by the other forest trees. We hope you found this supplemental presentation to be helpful as you prepare for the tree expert exam. This concludes Chapter 9, Construction Management. Please proceed to Chapter 10, Tree Identification.